Hello and welcome back to another episode of
It's Risky Business.
A show about taking risks, pursuing your passion, and getting shit done.
Oh.
And let me tell you, today, well, first of all, Amanda, it's a fucking packed house.
It's a packed house. First time in ever?
And ever, yeah. I would
First
say
time in ever.
In ever that we have this many beautiful people
good.
in the studio together
The new
with
baseline.
us. And you know, the show is about entrepreneurship, about taking risks, about going out on your own and pursuing your passion. And we have two people that have done just that and are continuing to do just that, leveling up in so many different ways. I mean, we have a book here by this man. We have a book here just recently released, incredible. And Alejandra, who's going into her first full year of entrepreneurship, right?
Go second year, yeah.
Second. You started 2020?
I started, 2020.
Okay,
Wow.
so year
2021.
2021. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but
It's
like
all good.
right at the beginning.
Because I always forget in the new year that it's actually the new year.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're going
Right.
into the second year.
I'm
Yeah.
going into the second
Going
year.
into the second.
Sophomore
Well, I mean,
year.
2020 is a wash.
Yeah,
anyway.
we-
Nobody's even putting that on the calendar anymore.
What was 2020?
That doesn't exist. So we're going to cover a lot.
Yeah.
This is going to be a thick episode. Go to the bathroom, have some water, because we have a lot to talk about. And we are, you know, as I said, we're really bringing in people that have gone out on their own, that have taken some risks. And the other reason why I wanted to bring both of you in here is that you are a couple. You are two small business owners that living under one roof. So that right there just changes the whole, whatever like a regular life would look like, because both of you are on coaching calls, you're giving seminars, you're talking, you're writing a book. I mean, so your schedules are not the 9 to 5, let's get out of work at this time and let's do this at this time. You're constantly being pulled by your clients, by also having to take care of your own health, mental health. So I'm really interested in finding out about that dynamic and how it all comes together. But Amanda, what do you think we should just take it back to the beginning?
Of
How these two got into entrepreneurship.
1,000%. Your origin story.
Your origin story.
Yes.
Ladies first.
Alrighty. Thank you, Stan and Amanda, for having us both here. And my origin story into entrepreneurship. Well, really, when I met Alvey, which is a little bit over 3 years ago now, I was in a 9 to 5 and he was already, he's been an entrepreneur for many years now. And I was in a job, I didn't really like it. And from meeting him, a lot in my life has transformed. And I think that's the power of when you meet someone, whether it's in a romantic or platonic way, that is such a powerful force for transformation and for holding space. That's why things like your networking group is so powerful, because when you get around other people who are in this mindset, the way that you elevate just by being associated and by being close to that is phenomenal. And that's really what happened when I met Alvey. And so I was in a job that I didn't like, and I had cycled through many jobs before. And I decided from that place on, I'm like, damn, I'm just not happy in this job. And Alvey, kind of coached me through all of that. And I decided to quit, and I decided to travel for a bit to just figure out what I wanted to do. And then when I came back, I wound up in this college admissions counseling company, really there to do college admissions counseling. That was my intention, but they had a career coaching department there. And the person doing career coaching was really unhappy, and she would complain about it every day. And I just reached the point where I was interested in doing it, but a lot of my mind drama was around, like, you said you were going to do college admissions counseling. So like, ignore that feeling you have in your body and do what you said you were going to come to do. It was kind of like I was having this wrestle. And finally I was like, you know what, fine. Like, I'll go ahead and I'll do some of the career coaching stuff. Like, how hard can it be? Whatever. And that's where I fell into career coaching. I was within a company, so I was following their protocols. I was following their process. And when I found career coaching, I was like, whoa, it's like my mind exploded. I was like, this is what I want to do. Because a lot of what I had realized was my own experiences of years of trial and error, of switching jobs, of negotiating my salary and falling flat and getting rejected and all these different things. Like, I never actually saw how naturally savvy I was in careers until I started career coaching.
Wow.
Because then I was like, yeah, of course. Why don't you just try that? Why don't you just try that? Why don't you just try to like do your LinkedIn for whatever? I just did that naturally on my own. And as I started to do that, I found that I really wanted to do career coaching in my own way, not in the way that they were doing it. Not that it was wrong or anything. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to have more autonomy over who I was working with. And I wanted to have more autonomy in my process. And then, you add in a lot of the personal development that we were doing together. I didn't admit to myself until March 5th of 2020 was the first time I admitted to myself that I didn't want to be in a 9-to-5 job.
Wow.
And then
That's
we
a
all
powerful
know
moment.
that, oh my gosh, it was like, and it was so funny because in that moment, it's like, I whispered it to myself because I was so scared. I was like, I don't think I would. Like, it was just so.
And I also see dead people.
Like, I was so terrified of that thought because I knew what it would mean in my life is just massive change. And that was terrifying. And then 10 days later, we went on lockdown.
Gosh.
Wow.
And I just said,
Just timing.
well, we're just going to go ahead and forget about that thought. Like, I just completely was like, just shoved it in the back of my head and said, that's ridiculous. What we need is security. We don't know what's happening in the world right now. And I stayed in my job. And it wasn't until, a lot of things happened in between. With COVID, we all know things became very polarized with politics, and that was beginning to play out within the office. And it wasn't until I went and did ayahuasca. We went on a journey in Costa Rica where it hit me so hard in the face. That was November of 2020. It hit me so hard in the face where it was just one of those things where it's like I could no longer ignore it because it was so in front of my face where it was like, just stop and go out and do your own thing. You are going in circles. That was the message. It's like, you're literally going in circles. And I just saw that. And I was like, once it was so clear in front of my face, I just had to take the leap. And so that's when I quit my job in December of 2020 and entered 2021, first full year of entrepreneurship. And a lot happened in between that, but that's really how it kind of got there. Just cycling through a lot of crap with my jobs, finding a place, thinking I was about to do one thing, only to wind up doing another thing. And then it wound up being something I love doing and just going off and doing it on my own.
Wow.
But what I love about your story is that you were also just seeking, right? You're seeking for the answers to come to you. You don't necessarily, you're not going to come up with what it is that you want to do right away. And it evolves, right?
Yeah.
It always evolves. And going even further back, you and I met at a HIT studio.
Oh, yeah.
Hit gym.
What is it?
Body tech.
What is it? What's high intensity interval training?
Yeah.
And what I admire about you and what I always suggest to anybody that's looking to get into entrepreneurship, looking to go out on their own, ask some people that are already doing it. And I remember that you were like, hey, can we grab a cup of coffee? I want to know about you and your background and how it is running your own business. And I think that a lot of times when people are in their 9-to-5 or they're in some career that they don't want, they always like ask their friends who are also in a 9-to-5 and a career that they want, that they're thinking about leaving their job and doing something different. And everybody's be like, are you crazy? Don't do that.
Right.
You got to ask the people that are already doing it. And they might also tell you, are you crazy? Stay in the job. Or they might be like, listen, it's going to be rough. And sometimes, it's tough, but it's also awesome because you own your own time and you know that if you don't make it, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Like it's your fault. So it's up to you to make it happen. And if you paint yourself up against the wall like that, you're going to show up for yourself. And that's what I've noticed about generally people who are entrepreneurs, people who have like this spirit of like, let's get shit done. So you just got to put yourself in that situation. So I really, really love that. And I love that you also made it your own, right? And I think that what happens now with so much social media and so much exposure to other people that are doing things, you want to do something similar and you're like, well, somebody's already doing it. And they're doing it so good already. Like, I can't do it. But like, you can make it your own. Like, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many nuggets there. The first thing that you mentioned is this kind of just the way I was exploring. And so it's not cookie cutter how I got to entrepreneurship at all. Like there were so many meltdowns. There was so much confusion. There was so much seeking, but seeking from a place of toxicity, like seeking from a place of like, I'm lacking something and I need to go find it, as opposed to seeking from a place of curiosity and like what's going to show up in life. And that's different energies.
Wow.
Both of them are seeking, but how are you approaching it? And I was seeking from a place of like, something's missing, something's wrong. I need to find my purpose. I need to do all these things. And it was super, super messy for me. And even entrepreneurship is a very messy journey for me. But I think that's such a great thing to point out. If anyone is aspiring to be an entrepreneur and you feel really messy and you feel really confused and you don't know how girl, I'm here with you. I know what that process is like. It was not cookie cutter. I didn't just overnight say I'm going to be an entrepreneur. It took many years.
Yeah. 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 We talked about that last episode, just the dynamism, the dynamics of being an entrepreneur.
The dynamics.
Yeah, the dynamics of being an entrepreneur. Like it is messy. I think that's a wonderful phrase, but that's also what propels us. The mystery and the curiosity of how we're going to be able to step forward.
Yeah.
Forward thinking mentality. I love that you said that. That might be a pro tip. First pro tip.
Pro tip early in the episode.
That's a record early. No, just approaching your journey from a mentality of seeking abundance and not from a place of lack.
Yeah. And curiosity,
exactly
like
where
you
you
said.
put that energy,
Curiosity.
that's super powerful.
Yeah.
But that's a daily practice, I think, because our mind automatically will like want to protect you, but you get the power.
Yeah.
That's where it's dynamic.
Yeah.
Dynamism.
Yeah,
I think that's a word, by the way. Dynamism.
Dynamism. Okay.
It could
Well,
be.
it is now. At least.
It is now.
We're going to need a
Big-
fact
big
checker.
point.
Now we
Boom.
need it's
Hold on, it's going to pop in at the bottom here.
bottom.
No, it's not. That's a mission to do an edit. It's not going to do it. So I want to go to you, Alvey, because you just released a book, and that's like just the evolution, right?
For sure.
You know, and I'm sure that the day that anybody starts out in entrepreneurship or their own business, they're not thinking I'm going to write a book someday. You know, it just kind of happens. Or maybe you are a badass and you're thinking that from the start. But you know, I think that you start to realize that you have this wealth of knowledge, and why not put it out there somewhere? And I'd like to know a little bit about how that process was for you, and maybe even backtrack more into how you got into entrepreneurship. I know some of it from just knowing you and some nuggets I found in the book, but let's hear about your journey.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely been an interesting journey, but also not necessarily that unique of a journey, if this makes sense. So when I first graduated from Georgetown, I was like, okay, I need to get my first corporate job, my first big boy job, all of that. And probably about 3 months into that job, I remember specifically waking up on a Monday morning and being like, I'm miserable.
Wow.
And then thinking like, yo, I'm way too young to be miserable. I'm 23. Like I've woken up at, 4 a.m. for football activities and things like that. And I was never that miserable on that 5 a.m. walk in DC, 40-degree weather, or 20-degree weather, uphill to go to the weight room, as I was in that like South Florida morning, 75 degrees. Like it's just a Monday going to work. So early on, I realized like, all right, this isn't really for me. But what I realized is I didn't have the courage at the time to just be like, all right, I'm going to get up and go do something else.
Right.
I kind of went through those motions of like, all right, I'm going to show up for work. I'm going to quote unquote do my job. But in reality, I was just doing a shitty job. And what that led to was me getting fired for the first time.
Oh my gosh.
And that allowed me to kind of take a step back and really think like, all right, what do I actually want to do? So what I thought I wanted to do was, okay, I'm going to go be a physical therapist. I love being around people. I'm thinking I can use that to be around athletes and, only work on athletes. And then over time, as I'm doing these classes, I realized that the main people that you work with are like the geriatric population. And I was like, yo, love my grandparents, don't love old people that much. I was like, I don't want to be doing that. But at the same time, something I was doing was interning at a sports performance gym. So I was doing sports performance training, personal training, working with people that were youth athletes to pro athletes, and then, weekend warriors, soccer moms, everything. And I loved that interaction of working with people and helping people improve themselves in some type of way. And over the span of time, I actually worked myself from intern to the director of sports performance.
Amazing.
For this
Incredible.
gym. Awesome. It was a great experience. Started working with amazing people, including Michael Vick. And
And I'm sorry to cut you off because
for it.
I want to point out something that I think is important, that people might get down on themselves because they're not performing well at work, and it's because they're just not being fulfilled.
Right.
So here you come from a job that you got fired at, and then you intern somewhere, and then now you're already, you're climbing the ladder
Wow,
and
that
you're doing
contrast.
well.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we get in our heads about not performing well, and it's just because we're doing something we don't want to do.
Right.
And I think that that's fantastic that you were able to switch and you found something, and then you really went at it.
For sure. And you make a great point there, Stan, of being able to look at my own life and kind of see like what's happening here. Like, why do I feel this way? And understand that there's something probably pretty deep and significant there. And what I realized was, okay, there was literally zero passion for what I was doing. So now what was interesting is now I'm in this place where I'm the director doing something I am passionate about. And in that 4-year period, not only was I helping people on their performance from a physical standpoint, but I had completely changed my diet. I had changed my practices around mindfulness and meditation, learning about just all these different ways to get in the best shape I could, physically, mentally, emotionally at that time. And as I learned those things, I started to realize all of these people that I'm working with in the gym are looking for so much more than just the physical goal. Like, yes, I might have a woman who comes to me and says that they want to lose 30 pounds, but there's a deeper reason why, right? In that woman's head, if she loses 30 more pounds, well, now what type of activities are you going to do in your life that maybe you're not doing now?
Yeah.
How are you going to feel about yourself, but that you don't feel that way now? And what I've realized and what I tried to help people understand even at that time was, look, whatever feeling you're looking for, whatever activity you're looking to do, you can do it before you lose the 30 pounds. You can embody that before you lose the weight. And we can lose the weight all at the same time. But we got to understand the big why behind it. Now, the way I ended up getting into entrepreneurship is once I got to that director level, I started really understand the politics of, corporate work.
Yeah.
In my head, before I got to director, I was like, ooh, once I'm the man, I'm going to do all these changes. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. We're going to go at it this way. We're going to create an amazing team. It's going to be perfect. Yet, when I got in that director role, there was things that I want to put in place. And I'd be like, oh, no, you can't really do that. I'd be like, okay, I'll switch. How about this? Like, well, no, you can't really do that. So I started to realize, even though I was at one of the top positions, I still didn't have the autonomy and freedom to actually create what I wanted to create. And it was interesting because when I decided to leave, there was actually a merger between the facility I was at and another gym that was coming in. And I realized that after having conversations with the other gym owners, if I was to stay on board, I basically would have been taking another 2 steps back.
Oh, wow.
And I was 20, maybe 25, 26 at the time. And I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not taking 2 steps back. And I didn't really have a backup plan. But in my head, I'm like, whatever, I'm just going to go after it. I'm going to do it on my own. Wow. And from there, literally left that gym. And that's when I started my own practice of coaching and doing it in a way where it's not just on the physical side, but on the mental, emotional side as well. And growing into this thing. But it was another situation where I was kind of like pushed into it, right? Like, if there was no merger, I don't know if at that point, if I could have just pulled myself away from it.
Yeah.
But because that happened, and instead of me sulking and being sad about it, I used it as an opportunity to grow and really just continue down the path of what I wanted.
Incredible. Yeah. That's so powerful. Yeah, I think they're blessings in disguises. Oh, yeah. Always. And when you're in the middle of it, you're like, what does this mean? What is the purpose of this? But again, much like your story, right? Like, you leaned into a circumstance and you looked forward, and then you just took those first few steps and everything else transformed from there.
For sure. And something that's always helped me on my journey, and for anyone who is thinking about getting into entrepreneurship or whatever the change you're looking to make, I've always held this belief that no matter what I go do, I can always go back to whatever I was already doing beforehand. Yeah. It's not like my experience goes away. Yeah. It's not like I lose my certifications. It's not like I didn't graduate from Georgetown anymore. Like, I told myself at like a young age, like, even when I got into sports performance, I was like, worst comes to worst, I'll lean on my Georgetown degree and get a 70K job and whatever, figure it out. And everyone has their version of that. Everyone has a set of skills and tools and things that they've been doing that, God forbid, worst comes to worst, like, you can go back to that type of thing, right? The floor is always so high.
That's good.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. My journey is in a way somewhat similar because I don't think you know this about me, but I used to work at a Bali Total Fitness.
No, I remember that.
Yeah.
You told me that on
I
my
never
podcast.
knew that.
Oh, okay. So
Wait.
you didn't know that?
Never knew
Oh my
that.
God,
Oh my
we're like best friends. You know each other.
I don't know.
You didn't know
I'm
I used to
shook.
work at a Bali
Never.
Total Fitness?
I can't even picture it. Was it a red shirt?
It was a red shirt with the name
I
tag.
could see Stan in a red.
The whole thing with
Were you
like
like the,
with like
the welcoming committee? Like,
Yeah.
get in, guys.
with like
4:30 in the morning.
5 pounds of gel in my hair, the whole thing.
I am
But
woke
so
up
I
right
was
now.
I'm good in that environment because I was front desk, and this is like one of my this is a job that I had during college, right?
Okay.
The manager, Darius, he loved me. He's like, man, I really want you in sales. And I think that you could really step up. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe, whatever. So then, but I'm doing great. And they were really flexible with my schedule in school. And that's why I was keeping that job. And then one day he comes to me, he's like, hey, listen, man, they got to fire so-and-so. I forgot his name. He's not pulling his own weight in sales. So, but because it's a corporate thing, I can't keep him in the same job, but I could bring him in a different position. So we're going to bring him in as a front desk, and he's got to take your hours.
Oh my God.
So, so I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah. So, it's kind of tough, but you basically have to let you go unless you can take these different days. And I'm like, well, those are the days that I have school. I mean, we talked about this, you know? And then he's like, he needs a job, and it's like, and it was his buddy basically,
That makes
and
sense.
I was like, and when I, instead of getting pissed and like blaming the world, and blaming other people, I said, wait a second. If this can happen to me, I mean, I was a good employee. I was a great employee. If this can happen to me now, it can happen to me at any point in the future. And that was the last like job that I had, working for somebody else, like on a schedule, them giving me my times. And that was in college. So it's like, to your point, Amanda, like we all get faced with some sort of situation and we make a decision. And I think that that's really what separates us from people who are kind of just like, okay, well, I'm just going to go back to doing this or do this, or kind of just like go with it. But you realize that you can make some changes for yourself and you can go after something else.
Yeah.
For sure.
Super, super
Wow.
important.
Amazing how you both have like similar journeys. Like there's so much alignment in terms of like the awakenings you had along your journey and being in a certain position that maybe like quote unquote was secure, but didn't fulfill you. And then you stepped forward. Like I can imagine you guys probably met and just had so much to spark off of each other. And then having him maybe already start that process and be able to coach you through it is a gift.
Yeah.
Like that is so incredible.
Yeah.
And you said it yourself, like romantic or platonic, as long as you can get those connections in your life and surround yourself with people that are already doing that sort of work, it's almost impossible to go backward.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of what you said, in terms of sparking each other, really, I was really resistant to Alvey in the beginning of our dating. And part of it was because I had a lot of insecurities about how, spiritual I thought I made him to be, how like advanced I thought he was, and how I was still like a lot of drama and a lot of trauma and a lot of things that I was working through. And so I didn't really allow it to even feel like that because I had so much of my own crap that I was trying to process when I met him and I was dating him. And really it was rooted in like, I'm not good enough for him.
Yeah.
And so that kind of sparked, like deep down, I knew that he was someone for me, which is why I like battled those emotions so much and the thoughts so much, because I knew that there was something there, but I was very resistant. And a lot of it was in that insecurity of like, this guy knows so much. Like, what am I like offering to this? That was kind of like the hint of what I was feeling and what I was thinking when we first started to date. And it was very transformative for me to kind of stick through that and to process that instead of freezing and then leaving and doing that like avoidant kind of attachment style. I just sat there really uncomfortable, really, really confused, and just allowed myself to process what was happening so that it can get to the place where I was like, oh yeah, we're both really amazing people and contribute to this relationship. But that took a while for sure.
That's huge.
Yeah. Love that. I'm like taking notes. I'm like thinking about my last relationship. I'm like, was I being avoidant? Did I break up with a good girl because I'm fucking avoidant? Fuck.
I mean, yeah, something to think about. There was a lot. I mean, Alvey makes like wee jokes about it occasionally, but I just made up a lot of stories about like, you know, who he was and like, you know, that secretly hoping that he'll mess it up and then I'll be like, you know, the victim and just, you know, just so much stuff that I had to like work through. Wow. But yeah, being able to get to the place where I was like, oh, okay, I am a powerful and independent person myself, and I contribute myself to this thing here. But it has been, you know, we on the recent podcast on Alvey's, on his podcast, we talked about entrepreneurship, and I had never really actually realized that he's witnessing my entrepreneurship unfold, and he's gone through it.
Amazing.
And it's really cool to think about that, for him to see me go through all the first year crap that happens in the entrepreneurship journey, and that he's essentially in a different way because we have different stories, but he's seeing a version of himself play out right in front of his eyes because of how I'm going into entrepreneurship.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And I think something that's been interesting about that dynamic too is because we're in a relationship, I'm not trying to coach my fiance.
Right.
Like it's just, there has to be permission there. There has to be the proper balance where that kind of stuff is invited. So I learned, you know, pretty quickly in our relationship, but like definitely by the time she got into her entrepreneurship, because we were probably together already for 10 months before, 8-10 months or something like that before she actually got into it. So once she got into entrepreneurship, I would see her making these quote unquote like mistakes. But when I say mistakes, it's more so how I perceive she was viewing things or like the doubt she was having about herself or becoming discouraged after, you know, 4 weeks or something silly. And, you know, a big part of me wants to be like, well, hey, don't worry about this. Don't do that. What's coming up for you? This, that, the other. But I know what it's like to like, you know, be in a pissy mood because stuff isn't going well in business or how I think it should be going in business. And the last thing I want is, especially my partner telling me like, well, did you look at it this way?
Exactly.
What's actually really going on here?
Don't do it.
And So I realized like anybody that's out there that is in a relationship and you're both going through entrepreneurship, I think it's really important to set boundaries and be asking for permission to share
to be invited,
things,
as you said,
to be invited into. Because if not, then there can be a lot of like resentment and stuff can get like really annoying really quick.
Man, I think that's a pro tip, right? That's that ding, 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 clink, 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 clink.
Yo, do you have like a sound that you like put in?
We're working on it. We're not there yet. We're working on it.
Yeah.
Like that.
We talked about a blowhorn.
Like the triangle, the little ding, 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 the triangle.
Like
but that might just make me hungry.
What about
a triangle? Or
Like a sound bowl? I think it's not as like impactful because it's like, oh, pro tip, hold on.
I got to build it up.
It's coming.
Okay, all right. I might try it.
No, I like the triangle.
Triangle, ding, ding, ding. No, but that is amazing because even couples that are not in entrepreneurship, I mean, you have to allow the advice to be invited. I think that's a huge point. Allow your partner to invite the advice. Basically,
it's so important, and it's been very beneficial in our relationship. And we were timelines. 8-10 months is when we started gratitude. But I would say about 1.5 years is when I went into entrepreneurship. But for sure, the coaching, and because we are two coaches, but even think about it as just advice giving. In our relationship, it's been so supportive for him to understand to not lean in with coaching, but to lean in, which is always like more helpful for me to lean in with, it's going to be okay, babe. Like, don't, and he'll make a joke out of it too. He's like, I'll live under a bridge with you. Don't worry. Like, you know, he jokes about things like that, but that always goes farther for me than him ever saying like, well, you know, what do you want to do about that? And it's just like, I don't know right now. I don't know right now. And so I 100%, and this can even go with friends. Like if you're, you know, friends going through a breakup or something like that, or you like, there's a fine line between being there for them and then just giving them a bunch of advice that's only making them feel more isolated. I think it's really important to know those boundaries.
I actually learned that with a friend because she was going through. She was venting, you know, she was venting about a lot of things. And I just generally in life, I'm a problem solver. I like to fix things. And I go into this whole rant on like trying to fix her problem. She was like, Sten, I know you're trying to be helpful, but I actually I don't want any response from you. Just don't say anything. In that moment, instead of me getting mad and like, wow, she just shut me off, I was like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, maybe people just need to like literally just like regurgitate the words that they need to make them feel better. And like, they're not asking for your advice. Like you just so happen to be next to them while they're talking, but because it'd be weird if they're in their room talking by themselves, I guess.
What's been wild lately is because I'm trying to be more vulnerable in my life and like sharing with friends is noticing when people like there's a subset of friends that like when you share with them, they literally, and this is kind of what therapists do, they just say it back to you. And I'm trying to do that now with them and really trying that out. So it's like, maybe it's not about giving advice, or being silent, which is also an approach, but try out mirroring.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing from you is da-da-da. Oh my God, it's so powerful. Because then they're like, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. I'm like, you just said that. You just didn't realize that you said that. Like it is in you. The truth is in you.
Yeah.
We need to compound the truth with ourselves, right?
Is there a limit to pro tips or
I think we knew. We already knew. Okay.
We
knew this episode.
We're overloading.
We're overloading. Like pro tip, because that's actually in Never Split the Difference, which we both read. Amazing book. Highly recommend. But one of the tips that he talks about, and he's a negotiator with a background in FBI, like negotiating for the FBI, international kidnappings. And he uses the tip of mirroring back to the person you're negotiating with. So if they say, oh, that's really expensive, you're like, okay, so you think it's really expensive, and just give them time to process it, because sometimes what can happen is they don't even realize the words that they just said. And so it's just being able to give them the opportunity to process, oh, is that what I said? And maybe that's not what I meant, or maybe it is what I meant, but that's not how I want it to be. There just opens up so much space. So not only in like, in this, there's just so many ways that can be so helpful, whether it's in therapy, whether it's with your friend, or whether you're negotiating something.
Love that.
Fabulous.
That's a super pro tip.
And I think something that goes into that too, it's really this understanding of, am I listening to reply or am I listening to understand? And the best way that you can help someone realize that you're actually truly listening to them is by telling them what you heard them say, or asking them like, hey, am I understanding this correctly? Did I hear you correctly? Goes a long way. And then to go back a little bit to a point where you were talking about, Stan, I think there's such an interesting dynamic, because I'll call it a pet peeve of mine. As much as I love to listen and hold space as a coach, I typically don't have like the longest leash when it comes to like victimhood and complaining. So I think when it comes to being on one side of it, it's understanding my own personal boundaries on what I'm allowing to come in. So here's what I mean by this. When I'm coaching somebody, my clients know when they're rambling. Like it's so important for me to be able to just catch them when they're just going off in too big of tangents, different things, because then that's my opportunity to ask them like, hey, like, well, what's the problem actually? Is it what you first said, or is what you're going into now? Because now you're talking about two different things. That's in a professional setting, bringing awareness. But when it comes to friends and things like that, even strangers, there's only a certain amount of stuff that I'm just going to let come on to me. Right. So like, I'm not a huge fan of people coming up with problems, but not being open or ready for solutions. So like if someone's coming to me to like gossip about somebody or badmouth somebody or just shit on some situation, I'll let it go on for a certain amount where my threshold is. But then eventually I get to a point where, well, this is like taken away from my peace. And I need to protect my energy.
100%.
So that's when I either have to, gently, most times, leave that conversation.
Shut it down.
Or it's like, hey, like, what is it that you're looking for here? Like, what do you want? Are you looking for someone to listen? I can be that, but not for that thing. Like that's not for me. So knowing what you want to listen to or not is huge, because if you're a problem solver saying you want to solve this person's problem, like granted, do you want to give that person an opportunity to vent? But at the same time, do you want to let someone just like unload all this stuff onto you, and then in your head you're just like, I want to do this, or you should do this. It's a cool dynamic,
and it definitely speaks to protecting your energy as somebody who's out there kind of absorbing and creating space for others as coaches. And I guess this is a great segue into what the dynamic is of having two coaches living under the same roof in terms of having coaching sessions. You're doing webinars. You wrote a book. You're doing a website. Like how does that look in terms of the home and the routines and then the scheduling?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
So what's interesting about it? So we have a dedicated room that we kind of say is like the serious room in a sense. Like
love that.
It's like the office space. Like if something needs to be recorded, if someone's having a private conversation, we go in that room.
Nice.
Right.
/ where we cuddle with Bentley.
Yeah, there's a room in there. It's a multi-purpose room.
Okay.
So, and
Bentley's
if you're
your
wondering,
dog.
yeah, Bentley's our dog, not our third partner.
Different show.
Different show. Or maybe say risky business.
Yeah, same show.
Good. See, yeah. So, we have that room and we kind of have a flow of like talking to each other and knowing, who's going to be in that room for what.
Mm-hmm.
And then if someone's doing tasks that doesn't require that level of, say, privacy or something like that, then, we'll be in the living room or we'll be in other places. So that works out well. And usually at least twice a week, I'm in Broward. So like she knows those 2 days. It's pretty much all her. And I take clients in the evening. She typically doesn't take clients that late into the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a good flow of like how that works out now.
Nice.
Yeah, I do think it's a good flow. I think also, though, as we both continue to grow and get, more things coming in particular for me, more clients, we'll have to figure out a way to maybe more so systematize how we're coordinating within that room. Because right now it does work out where it's like, oh, I have a call at this time. Usually in the morning, we ask each other what we're up to for the day and we'll talk about what times we need the room or just say that we have a call. And we know if I say, oh, I have a 10 o'clock call with a client, like it's insinuated, understood that, okay, I'm going to use the room. But yeah, I definitely think some systems are going to be needed in the future once things get, flowing more for me in particular. And the other thing that I would love to talk about is when it comes to both of us being coaches and in a relationship living under the same place, a lot of it was the transition for me of managing the stress of entrepreneurship and the presence and still being present in the relationship and still making time for our things. And so I think there were many things that came into play. So I quit my job in December of 2020 and then started 2021 as an entrepreneur. My dad died in late January so I'm like 3 weeks into entrepreneurship and I'm over here like, okay, I'm going to get it. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. I'm just like all these different things. And then my dad unexpectedly dies. And so adding in that and a lot of the grief that had to come in with that and processing that. And then after that, we got Bentley in March of 2021, and he has been a blessing. I love Bentley. He has just brought me so much joy. And we have a living thing in our home that depends on us to survive.
Yes.
And so just being able to kind of move around and be like, okay, now we have a dog and now we care for a dog and now we have this dog that we take care of and we need to take out and just all these different things and nurturing and making sure, that it's okay and healthy. So I think a lot of these things happening in the early on paired with stress, how am I going to build my business? All these things. It was like, I remember I reached a point where I was like, babe, I want more like quality time. I was like, I don't really feel like we're together, but like I want to hang. And we weren't having like any drama or anything, but I was like, I just miss like doing things together. Because when we did get Bentley, I was like, oh my God. And I've heard some people talk about like babies like that too, where it's like everything becomes about the baby. And it's like we just got this dog, this beautiful, loving dog. It was like everything was about the dog. We loved the dog and cuddle with the dog. And I was like, I want to like cuddle with each other.
Yeah.
And it was really important to kind of reframe and be like, okay, I'm noticing that because of all the stress and because of this new thing and because of grief and, him running his own business, it was about making a conscious choice to still spend quality time together and to do things together and to acknowledge that there was a shift. There was a shift within the relationship where we were so busy kind of doing our thing and then being with Bentley that we weren't doing more of the romantic quality time things, which is my primary love language. And so being able to understand that and talk about that is really important. And so for anyone who it's two entrepreneurs within a household, just being able to balance out all of the things and making time for yourself while also making time for your partner and not being so hard when something's kind of falling out, just like, okay, now you just get to bring it back up a little bit and kind of focus some time on that. So that's a big one, I think, for us in a relationship now, me as an entrepreneur. And the last thing is like, once I became an entrepreneur, I feel like I don't know if you sense this, but I feel this about myself. I became way more supportive about his business and his entrepreneurship because I just understood it on a different level because I was there now.
Yeah.
So like before he would tell me about these things he was doing, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. But like now he tells me things, I'm like, that's fucking amazing. You're going to go talk for that. That's great. Like I'm so much more excited because I know like what that like the feeling and just like being acknowledged and seeing your work, like it's just a different way in entrepreneurship. So I think in that way, it's brought an appreciation from me to him on a much deeper level, which I think then seeps into our relationship and how it shows up in our relationship. So in that way, it's beautiful being both entrepreneurs and understanding that.
That's incredible. And I would say too, to give that last point some more context, you know, she would come home when she was in her 9 to 5 at 5:30 and I'd be chilling with my feet up. And she would just think that I hadn't done shit for the entire day. And I was just chilling with my, like, what do you do? Like, are you doing anything? And I was like,
and you're still on that pent up energy of like,
and just drove home.
Frustration.
Traffic.
Yeah. And in that traffic, you're like, hate my job. Why am I doing this? And you get home and you're like, okay.
What the heck are you doing? Yeah, no, absolutely.
Making money. Making moves.
Dreaming of my book that I'm about to write.
Now I'm resting and recovering. I'm practicing what I preach.
Fantastic. That's so good. So I'm curious about two things. One is I love tipping points, right? Like that moment where you're like, I'm going to do that thing. So I want to talk about your book. And I'm very curious, what was a tipping point in wanting to write it and like putting pen to paper, literally, or keyboard to screen in today's world? And I want to know about what did the celebration when it came out and it was in your hands felt like.
Let's give them the title. You Can Too, Life Lessons from My Mom's Untimely Death.
Yes. Yeah, it's a great question. And it's funny because I've realized a lot in my entrepreneurship journey. There's been many things that I've wanted to do, but I didn't get right on it in that moment because of my own self-limiting beliefs or being quote unquote distracted by something else. So I've wanted to write this book for at least like 4 or 5 years, right? And it just so happened that this past June 17th, so June 17th, 2021, it was my mom's birthday. And you know, every year around her birthday, I'm always thinking about her. And then on that day specifically, I'm like, you know what? For her birthday next year, I want to have the book finished. Wow. So like my birthday present to her was going to be the book, right?
Wow.
Done.
Amazing.
So the goal was June 2022, right?
You blew that goal out of the water.
I did. But, and it's funny how it happened though, because what I told myself was, all right, so I'm just going to sit at the computer and I'm going to do something every day for it. Right. So fast forward to August, I hadn't done shit. I didn't do anything for it. I hadn't done anything. And it was, I don't know if y'all have ever had this feeling of like wanting something, but like not doing anything for it and just being like, oh, just this feeling of like, oh, what am I?
I'm in that right now with like 7 projects.
Yeah. I feel you. And so it was interesting. I was feeling that feeling. And then I was at Miami Made, which is a conscious networking group that Sten, myself, and Alejandra are a part of. Why are you never there? That's such a good question. Why aren't you?
I feel like
Miami
I've been
Made?
to one. Did I go to the first?
I don't
know why I'm
And
not.
the answer is because you don't want to.
Yeah.
I do.
Maybe.
I struggle with the early mornings with having a kid. There's always an excuse.
I got you.
There's always an excuse.
At least you're real about
I
it.
feel like now it's
Pop
been
out.
Yeah,
Pop
pop
out
out.
one day.
Pop out.
Yeah, slide through.
Is there coffee?
Yeah.
There is coffee.
And bagels sometimes. And fruit though.
They
Really
got
good fruit.
blueberries.
Yeah, fruit,
Got
blueberries,
fruit.
some lox if you like that.
PB. I had a PB&J last time.
They have locks over there.
Fancy, right?
Oh yeah. You can make a lux. Yeah.
CFC might have to step up.
I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah.
saying
Yeah.
that's an intense.
We're
Okay.
definitely not gonna
So-
have locks.
So no locks at CFC. It's been stated. So we're at one of the meetings, and this was August of 2021, and we do this thing called the give and a get, where essentially we tell people like, "Hey, this is something that I'm looking for, and this is something that I'm offering to the group." And one of my good friends now, Mo Hassan, got up and he was talking about how he wants to help people who want to write their book because he's written books before. So he said that, and at the same time, I have this feeling of like, why aren't I doing it? And I'm like, all right, well, this is a sign. So
100%.
after the meeting, I was like, all right, let me go talk to him. And for any of you that meet Mo is a character, but smart as hell. And I took him out to lunch, and during the lunch, he's telling me about his book writing process and what it looks like. And he asked me, he's like, all right, so like, when are you looking to have this book done by? And I felt kind of like nervous because I was like, oh, I want to do it super soon. And I told him June of 2022. And he's like, why the fuck you want to wait that long for? And I was like, what? And he's basically telling me about his process. And I told him, I was like, all right, like, sign me up. So I hired him to help me with the process. And it was just unbelievable how fast the process went. And essentially, the tipping point for me was just that almost like inner, I don't want to call it anxiety, but it was just like this pent up energy of like, what the hell are you waiting for? Right. And then the sign came and, you know, I took advantage of it. And once I got into it, and I know all of y'all know about this because you're all high performers, you know what it feels like to produce when you're present and focused on something and you're making it a priority. So the way I went about the book, because I'm an entrepreneur and I have all these other things going on, let me schedule time. And instead of scheduling like an hour here, an hour there, I would schedule like 6-hour blocks throughout 2-3 days out the week. And basically he showed me this whole formula that allowed me to produce it really, really fast. And before I knew it, you know, I was just celebrating just along the way. Once one step got done, it was like, woo. He's like, yeah, go celebrate, talk about it on Instagram, this, that, the other. And something you might not know about me, but something I usually don't really like to do is celebrate myself. Right. And I talk about that in the book.
Well,
right?
you know, it's funny because that is the part of the book that I highlighted and I wanted to talk about.
We talked about that before.
So look at that. No
Alignment.
mistakes.
No mistakes.
Yeah. And eventually I just got to the point where, you know, once I got in this process and then I finished it, I remember getting the first hard copy in, because what had happened was, you know, it's always a good story when it starts with what had happened was we planned this huge Art Basel event, which was amazing, by the way. Had like 85 people there. And one of the big parts of the event was celebrating the book launch.
Nice.
Right. So in order to, in my head, have a book launch, I need to have a book,
Right.
like a real one. Right. I was like, no, I'm not going to put a Kindle out there with something. No, I need the book. And we got to like a week before the event, and I was having like these little problems with editing with Amazon. And they're like, well, no, well, you got to do this. I'm like, fine, what? So it's not going to be done in time. So I started looking online, like, who can ship books out fast? And I found a place. I was like 48hourbooks.com or something like that. And literally like got on the phone with them, sent them my stuff, told them a couple things I needed fixed. And it's so funny. It ended up costing so much more because I had to get it expedited.
Oh my God.
And like shipped overnight, that actually cost like twice as much as actually getting the books printed, which I just thought was so funny.
My God. That's
So for the
good.
few people who have edition 0,
Wow.
because I had my first 10 copies, edition 0, those were like $40 a pop to get made. but it was
Prized
amazing.
possession.
Yeah, but it was amazing. Like the Friday before the event, it was Friday evening. I got the box. Like Alejandra and I were there, just like mad anxious. Oh, how's it gonna look? As if I've never seen a book before. And, we open up the box and I see it. I'm just like, oh my God, like this is crazy.
Oh my God.
Just feeling the cover, looking at the art, like understanding that all of this time that I had put into it, not just the physical time of actually doing it, but all that agonizing and the suffering of thinking about like, oh, when am I going to actually do this thing? And to see it there was an amazing feeling. And it really shows me now, like I'm already working on my second book.
Nice.
And it just shows me that there's a process now that I can use to get things done fast. And that's what I think as entrepreneurs, we get to realize is that things can get done fast. And when I say that, it's not just the result being fast, but the actions that we take are fast. So if you need more information, you can go look for the information now, right?
Yeah.
If there's certain things you need to do, you can do the thing now. And if there's other parts in between that you have to have handled, well, get that handled right away instead of sitting there and waiting, because waiting doesn't do anything. Life is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. The information is out there. I mean, really, we're living in a time where there's really just no excuses, really. I mean, you can figure out how to do anything just by watching a YouTube video.
Yeah. And not only that, like now the added element of meeting a guy like Mo who coaches people on how to write books. Like did you ever know that such person existed? I didn't know that there was like a book writing coach trainer. I never knew that.
Yeah, I didn't know until he started that process. And there are people who dedicate their work to helping other people write books, because there is so much like hesitation,
failure,
and drama, and about writing a book. And the thing that I often hear is just straight up writing it. Like so many people just get super caught up in writing it. So yeah, it's a whole profession that people
I love
have.
that. And so that was going to kind of be the segue to my point, is that there are coaches in training and in, actual people to go to and lean on in every single area of need.
Every single area.
So just leaning into all of that.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And going back to your point, I want to actually highlighted the chapter 9, which is Celebrate You. And it was after your transformational leadership development program that you realized that you were lacking the celebration of yourself.
100%.
And how we often, and I feel like especially entrepreneurs, that we have trouble accepting praise. Right. And you and I, Amanda, have talked about this, especially because we deliver a creative product. And a lot of times people have been like, oh my God, that video is so amazing. And I'm like, no, but there's a weird moment here. And I start to go into what's wrong with it when this person is just celebrating me. And I, for years, never really sat there and accepted it, and you say here how it's been essential for you to be your biggest cheerleader and to recognize your own greatness.
100%. And why I think that's so important is this point here. What I learned is that it's actually physiologically built into our DNA to realize what's wrong or what's missing. Because if we think about early man and early woman, what was missing was usually a matter of life or death.
Wow.
Right. So in order to survive, we literally had to look at every situation like, what's wrong? What can be the worst possible thing? And how do I avoid that so I can live? Now, our circumstances aren't the same today in 2022, but physiologically, it's still wired in our genetics and our DNA. And I believe that's a huge reason why, like, you can be making a great video, Stan, you look at the video, everyone's praising it, but you're looking at that one thing that's wrong because it's that survival tactic, that survival instinct. So once I realized that was a thing, now I can notice like, okay, that type of feeling is still going to come up, but now it's the practice of being present and being aware that I can like shift from that and realize like, it doesn't matter how many great things I do if I don't recognize it. If I feel like I'm always searching for more, trying to do more so that I'm enough and that I'm worthy, well, shit, I'm going to be waiting the rest of my life, because as a human being, my potential is limitless.
Yeah.
Like there's always more. But if I'm always seeking out more, I'll be seeking forever.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the nonsense kind of comes in. So now I've reframed that to understand like, look, while I'm along the way around every step, celebrate it. Like be happy about it. Realize I did that. And then when I get to the next thing, celebrate that.
Yeah.
And be happy about it. And that's something what I have my clients do as well, because it's so easy to only be worried about, the goal that's way over there that seems so far. But if you're not celebrating them along the way, you're not really acknowledging yourself in the process, then you can get 99% the way there. And then you're going to trip because you didn't get that 1%,
right.
which is foolish.
Yeah. 100%.
You saying that reminds me about there's this moment that's seared into my mind where I had the aha moment that I could be an entrepreneur. And it was when I was on a call and my now dear friend, Carlos de la Playa, was on the call, and he is an entrepreneur, and he was essentially just speaking very vulnerably about the struggles that he was having. And I just remember looking at him, and it seemed silly, but my thought was, oh, so entrepreneurs don't have it all together. Like they don't have it figured out.
Wow.
Like I just somehow, because I was working in a corporate, I just looked at entrepreneurs as like, the way I looked at Sten, I was like, yo, he's like, he has this going on. He has this going on. He's like so awesome. And he's just like, has it. I don't know. It just like the words never came through my head. Like he has it all together, but that was the thought behind it.
Definitely didn't. I was just trying to figure it out. Right.
And I think that's exactly like, Alvey, you realize that it's about a year and a half, maybe like a year ago, the celebrating of yourself when we were both doing that leadership training development. And that is still something that now you've got to remind yourself, oh yeah, celebrate myself. And that's the important, and we're freaking coaches. So just understand, like, we don't have it together. We still have things that we're working through. And then more things come up as we go through our entrepreneurship journey. It's how the game works. You're simply going to figure it out. If you're committed to it, you're going to figure it out as you go and have a network to support you as well.
Yeah. It's like what they say, that if you think you know it all already, like you don't, because there's always more to learn, and you should definitely be a student of life. And that's really something that has inspired me to keep going in my own life, because I've just fall in love with learning and learning new things. And even if it's something that has absolutely nothing to do with your career and your job. And I think that's kind of one of the pitfalls of falling into kind of just like the hamster wheel of a 9-to-5, that you're just kind of doing one particular job and you're not allowing yourself to learn other things, because you're like, oh, well, I don't need that for my job. So what do I need that for? But the more that you can feed your mind, the sharper you'll be, and the more you'll just be in awe of how amazing life is in general.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to paraphrase this quote, but it's this idea that the more that I learn, the more I realize that I don't know anything. Right? Because there's so much that's out there. And I remember very early in my personal development journey getting to this point where I'm just like, damn, like, when am I going to be there? Almost like enlightened in a way. It's like, look, I've been doing this for about, 18 months now, working pretty diligently at it. Like, why does all this stuff keep popping up and I'm not perfect in handling it?
Yeah.
And it's so funny to look back at that as like, in my mid 20s versus now. And instead of looking at not knowing something as a problem or a downfall, to me, it's super exciting.
Yeah.
Because it's like, one, there's so much out there to learn. I should never be bored.
Right.
And I tell this to my adult friends. Well, I guess I only have adult friends. I don't have too many kid friends, but I tell my adult friends this all the time. It's like, you should never be bored.
Yeah.
Never. Like, if you find yourself bored, that means that you're literally just like throwing the towel in and you're not trying to learn anything, better yourself, because look around at how much stuff there is to do.
It's all available.
It's all available. And then really reframing this idea of like not knowing a lot of things. Like, to me, that's exciting. Yeah. As opposed to it being like a negative thing.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So tell us where our lovely audience can find you both, social handles, whatever.
Well, my name is Alejandra Hernandez, and on Instagram, I'm Empower Change. So I just added an H into empower and made it Empower Change. That's where you can find me on Instagram. On LinkedIn, I'm AI Hernandez. I'm also on TikTok, but I'm most active, I would say, on Instagram and LinkedIn. So go on over and come and check me out.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And my name is Alvey Thompson, a.k.a. Mr. You Can Too. You dig. And you can find me on Instagram at Mr. You Can Too. That's MRYOUCA and the number 2. And you can find me on my podcast.
That's right.
How You Can Too. How and then You Can Too, all one word. And then you can check me out on Amazon. Find my book. Yeah, put it into the camera so they can see it. You Can Too, Life Lessons from My Mom's Untimely Death. And honestly, I wrote that book, one, so people can see really what growth can look like and how you can turn, trials and tribulations into triumph. Because I'm about as regular as it comes. Like, I'm a regular human being like everyone else out there. And the second part is like anyone that's looking to better themselves and maybe have never went on any type of personal development journey, or maybe you are currently in it. These are just some of the main life lessons that I got that I take with me every single day, and you can too.
That's so good.
Fantastic. And as we close, I always like to spew some things out. And I just want to remind everybody and anybody listening that you can just start whenever. I mean, literally, you can get up at 3 in the fucking morning and be like, you know what? I want to start a business. And you literally just write it down somewhere. You can research an article. You can find a website. You can bookmark it, save it for later, watch a video. I mean, you can do anything right now to start your own business or to pursue your passion in some way, even if it's not something that's going to happen next week, next month, next year, but at least start the process now. Because the thing that keeps me up at night is that there are people in the world, and I have some of these people in my family that have given up on their talents, on their gifts, the things that they have inside of them that they were born with to give to the world. They never gave it. And they are old and tired, bitter, and there's no way that they're going to bring that gift out anymore. So do it while you can, because the world deserves it. And you deserve to give it to the world.
Even if it's not starting a business, it could be, I need my mindset to change.
100%.
And then even if it starts with a whisper to yourself, like yours did.
Yeah.
Or you get up at 3 a.m, you say, fuck this shit. This ends right now. Whatever tone of voice or approach, just take that first step and tell at least one person so they can hold you accountable.
All of them. It's all our own unique process. And I love for me, I work with people in 9-to-5s, in careers. And what is so heartbreaking for me and that keeps me up at night is thinking about how we aren't taught and sharpened to be leaders, to be effective communicators, to be kind, to how do we actually resolve our conflicts? And that's why office spaces can be so toxic. And so even if you are in a 9-to-5, what is it that you enjoy doing? That's not the only thing in your life. What do you enjoy doing? Do you like dancing? Do you like poetry? Do you know? If not, just go out and try some things. But it's so important, like Sten said, to start now. Start now. Just because you have a job doesn't mean that you can't be your own version of an entrepreneur, your own version of a leader. How can you begin to implement those things now, regardless of whatever situation you're in?
100%.
You're the CEO of your life.
Yeah. So that's our show for today. You know how we don't know where the things are going to pop up. Subscribe, comment below, share, do the whole thing. I mean, we're starting to figure out the cameras. So I feel like we did good today with the cameras.
It's going to be a progression. It's going to be definitely like every episode. I feel like I'm just going to keep like reviewing what's
All right. So again, thank you both for taking the time out of your schedules to come and hang out with us. And wealth, happiness, and abundance to you both. Continue to spread your knowledge, your gifts to the world, because we definitely need it.
Thank you. Thank you, Sten. Thank you, Amanda, for having us here. I appreciate you both.
Dynamic blessings.
We out. Peace.
Peace.